Wait just a second. I guess we can start with an introduction. Who we are. Chris, you can probably take that one. What do you do at Network Depot? But by the way, guys, what we're going to do today, obviously, we're going to talk about CMMC. We're going to give you the whole rundown on what everything kind of entails with CMMC, high level, pretty deep into some technicalities. Chris is the owner here at Network Depot. I'm going to let him introduce us real quick, our relation to the NAGC, which is who this webinar is obviously for. Um, and then we'll get started with the info. And any questions that you guys have throughout this webinar, please send it in the chat. We have moderators here. We'll be actively monitoring that and then answering those questions, some of them throughout, some of them at the end. Kind of the agenda today is going to be a half hour of us talking about CMMC, and then we'll move into more official Q&A. So Chris, go ahead and yeah, tell us who we are.
Yeah, well, first I want to. I'm Chris. I run Network Depot, but I want to thank NAGC, the National Association of Government Contractors. Apparently, CMMC is a hot topic there. So they said that they're getting a lot of questions internally, and kind of reached out, seeing if we could speak to it to the members. And so this is a three-part series. This is a big topic that affects a lot of government contractors around the country, and it seems like it's coming on really fast. We'll kind of talk about the history of CMMC, give some context. And then, like Matt said, we're going to kind of go into, hopefully, the goal of this series is to answer all your questions. And the goal of today is to organize those questions. And that would be kind of the 5 steps of how to become CMMC compliant. Basically from nothing to compliant, and then kind of what happens after that. So that's the goal of today. Like Matt said, Nate Wengreen is going to be kind of pausing at the end of every section, and we're going to be fielding questions, that pertain to that section. So that's the goal. That's what we're going to kind of aim to do.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a little bit of an agenda today for us, and we've talked about this before. If you guys follow us on social media, we've made a few posts about it. We believe there's 5 steps to becoming compliant with CMMC. Step one is going to be obviously find the right provider. Unless you're doing this completely in-house, which you can, it's best to get an expert in there, whether you appoint an FSO to do some of this work and hire an MSP, or you try and do it all yourselves. Step one is definitely find a company or staff yourselves that can get you compliant. And the 2 steps that they're going to be responsible for, which are steps 2 and 3 in our series today, are one, start to do a gap analysis, kind of see where you're at, where you stand against the CMMC 110 controls. And the second would be remediation. What's going to happen is when you do a gap analysis, you're going to uncover some places likely where you're lacking and where you're not up to par, up to standard with the 110 controls that there are. And so you have to remediate in order to be ready for the 4th step, which is an audit with an official C3PAO, which is a certified CMMC practitioner org. They'll come in and they'll give you the official stamp that says, yes, you're compliant. You can now bid on these DoD contracts. And step 5 is maintenance. You cannot just get the audit and then be scotch-free forever. You have to stay compliant. The importance of CMMC is that companies don't just get that stamp. They stay compliant throughout their 3-year term before they have to re-audit. And then there is obviously an official or an unofficial re-audit of yourselves annually included in that. So yeah, I guess we'll just start with step 1. Chris, this is a question for you. Obviously, find the company that's right for you. Uh, let's talk about small businesses first. We'll say 50 staff and less. What would you recommend, or what would you prescribe as the official CMMC doctor? What is the best solution for those companies generally? And then we'll talk about 50 staff and above. What would be the best solution for them?
Yeah, well, I want to kind of like give a little bit of context behind CMMC and maybe kind of the evolution
Sure.
and why it matters now, and kind of like what we see happening out there.
Yeah,
So
let's start with that.
CMMC is nothing new. Okay, maybe it's new to you, or it feels new. It's been around for a very long time. It's evolution from DFARS, and then it evolved into NIST, and NIST 800-171, and CMMC is directly based on that subset of controls, okay, that framework of NIST. And it's 110 controls, kind of yes, no's. And kind of sneaky of them, it's not 110 yes, no's. There's actually 320 objectives within those controls. And so you really have to get 320 yeses. And so that's what you're after. And what it is designed to do, and I'm sure this is kind of like covering the basics for most, but I want to level set the conversation. What it's designed to do is control the flow of CUI, okay? Classified or controlled unclassified information. That's what this is designed to do. That's what this framework does. And so when the prime or the government themselves is sharing sensitive information with the prime, and then that's going to eventually trickle into your inboxes, they want to make sure that information is safe. So it comes in your mailbox, maybe it's in your SharePoint, maybe some of your staff is working on it, maybe your sales guys are putting together a quote based on that information. The flow of that information into your company, what you do while it's there, and then the egress of it if you're sending it to subs, or, your own vendors or back to the government, the flow out of that information. And so that's what we're going to be speaking on. It's really the premise itself is pretty simple, but how you execute that and then demonstrate that you're executing that, that's where, that's where the rubber meets the road. So step one in that process is going to be to find out where you're at. So that's an assessment. That's what Matt is saying. You know, hopefully you guys have some idea of how CUI is flowing right now into your organization and then what you guys are doing with it and how you're flowing out of it. But you're really, you're talking about technical things. And if there are a bunch of business owners on the call right now, maybe you've appointed an FSO. You heard Matt say that. That's a facility security officer. It's a point person from within your organization who's responsible for a lot of this stuff. And that's all well and good, but you should probably involve I don't know the size of your guys' company, but like we'll split it, like Matt said, between 50 employees and fewer, and then 50 employees or above. If you have an MSP or you have an external MSSP or you have a security vendor, they're going to be the most involved vendor you have, most involved partnership that you have in this process. And so, reach out to them. So when Matt says find a provider for you, like you hopefully already have somebody. Give them a call. They're going to be a huge player in your CMMC journey. So
Yes, someone needs to take the baton here. There's so much work to be done. Maybe Chris, talk about a little bit of the extent of how involved that org is or those appointed staff are in this, the initial gap analysis, and the remediation, but especially just as a whole. I mean, they're going to play a part forever, especially with the maintenance. I mean, the whole thing is going to be that company or that group of individuals that you appoint to get yourself compliant. Um,
yeah, I mean, like when you think about it, Matt, and by the way, for the attendees, you could, feel free to take notes. We're gonna be recording today's session. Obviously, we have this all like in e-pamphlets, and Nate Wengreen can follow up with you afterwards, or at some point here, we're gonna try to answer all your questions, but at some point along the way, you're gonna have a one-on-one conversation with somebody about this, about your stuff to answer your questions. So feel free to reach out to Nate at n.wengreen at networkdepot.com after this. If you want to,
or me, you can get my calendar.
or Matt. But yeah, that's what's up. So, don't feel like there's not gonna be slideshows and stuff like that. This is gonna be mostly conversational. Kind of real world questions. What are people been asking us? And
Yeah,
Matt's
we
kind of
just had a
uniquely
question come
qualified for
in.
that.
Not to kick the can again, Chris, but
Yeah.
somebody just Mike Reynoso just asked a question. He said, "Are micro small businesses required to invest in compliancy, meaning less than 10 staff?" Mike, I guess I can kind of take this, then Chris can maybe expand into it a little bit if we need to. It's dependent on the type of contract that you're winning. If the contract itself, if you're on SAM.gov and you're looking at the requirements of the contract, if it says that it requires CMMC level 1 or 2, or in some cases 3, it generally won't apply to contracts that you might be bidding on as a smaller org. That it will be stated there. The size of the org does not matter, whether you're one staff or a million. It's not going to make a difference. It's all the type of the contract itself,
Yeah.
and it will be written in the contract itself.
Yeah, and we're seeing that pop up. I think that like kind of plays into the timeline of
Yeah.
this. So this if you guys have heard the CFR 48, Rule 48, that is a congressional federal ruling. Okay. And that's what is, that's what's been progressing through Congress with CMMC. And I think it was like September 10th, they gave 45-day notice that, okay, it's going to get real. Like it's going to start showing up on contracts in November. That's not a huge like light switch. I think some people expected that to be a kind of drop dead date light switch. They've given a bit of a grace period. So if you have, and we'll get into this maybe in step two, but if you have a plan of action with milestones, like you have a plan to get CMMC compliant, there's been a bit of a grace period that we've seen so far, but it does
Yeah,
vary. It's contract dependent. So there's no
it
kind of
is.
like overarching blanket. It's like some contracts, we have a client who's a moving company, and they move military personnel, and they need to be CMMC level one. That's like good hygiene. Level two is the common one that we're going to be mostly talking about today. Level three is going to be related to mostly ITAR. If that applies to you guys, it's more stringent. But level two is the baseline. That
Kind of like the
is
benchmark.
that's about controlling CUI. And I'm going to say CUI if you hear that. Like there's this whole we could do a whole web series on acronyms. Like
There's
there
so
are,
many.
we could talk about acronyms for weeks, but CUI is the most important one. Okay, CUI is the most important one. What you do with it. Uh, anyway, that's so yeah, like Matt said, it doesn't matter how big or small you are.
Yeah, it's like Chris said, it's going to come down to, are you managing FCI or CUI? And
Mhm.
the point of CMMC, I think the goal of it several years ago when Katie Arrington, who's now the CISO of the country, the Chief Information Security Officer under this current administration, she's one of the official authors back in 2019, 2020, 2021, when CMMC was first rolling itself out. And then the 48 CFR role, as you guys should know, officially went live November 10th of 2025, and they gave everyone 60 days to kind of get there. Obviously, it's not enough. It still feels like there's a bit of a grace period. There's some unknowns out there still. But if a contract says requires CMMC level one or level two or level three, there's no exceptions, and you are officially ineligible to bid on it unless you have those stamps. So
Mhm.
as of November 10th. And the
Yeah.
point of this is not just, and I think this is a good point to make, Chris. We can maybe talk a bit about it. It seems to be that, and everybody's seen Doge go in and start tearing up contracts and kick out some of the USAID contracts a couple years ago back. It seems to be the theme that CMMC will not just take hold in the DoD space, Department of War space, but that will expand throughout all contracts throughout the entire federal government. Um, it's just going to be
Yeah.
the benchmark.
Yeah.
It's just that that's most pertinent for national security at the moment.
When do you guys, well, if you were to go through a certification like we have to become, officially legally allowed to give advice about CMMC, it says a pretty cool quote. It says that it's starting with at the time DoD, but now DoW, but it's built for all arms of the government. And so this is in my view an inevitability, and it's a good thing, right? Like it's the army shares the blueprints of an army base with an HVAC vendor, and they want to make sure that that HVAC vendor is not getting hacked. They want to make sure those blueprints stay safe, and so this is a good thing. Level one is basic hygiene. There's only 14 controls, and it's a self attestation. So certainly that would be a starting place. But then level two is 110 controls and 320 objectives, and um, that's a longer runway. That's a longer runway. It's not a self attestation. You need policies to prove all that stuff. Anyway, let's get rolling. So step one is you
Yeah.
guys need to speak to likely if you have an MSP, give them a call if you haven't already. If that MSP comes back and says, well, they're likely going to say, yeah, sure, we've heard of CMMC, and yeah, we can get you there type thing. But I would ask them, hey, could I get the number of one client that you've helped get there?
Could also ask them
How
where
would
they
that
are in
bat?
their CMMC process themselves if they're doing it.
Hmm. Yeah, the MSP, like you have to understand, this is why your first phone call should be to them. If you do have an MSP, then they're going to be responsible for supporting your users and your environment. And if they aren't comfortable with GCC, or if they aren't comfortable with Prevail or VDI Enclave, if they can't speak that lingo and their staff can't speak that lingo and their tool sets aren't all FedRAMP compliant, well, then you should know that first. You should know
Yeah.
that first. The MSP plays a huge role in not just getting you there, kind of building the infrastructure, but then also supporting you and your users afterwards. So,
Mm,
um, that's where I would start. That is step one to me.
yeah. What do you think, Chris, if let's say a contractor does not have an MSP currently? And by the way, guys, MSP, managed services provider, it's your IT department or the outsourced IT company that you guys use for your help desk. We are an MSP. We've been around since 1991. We're probably the oldest MSP in the East Coast, if not one of the 10 oldest. Um,
There weren't really
well,
MSPs like before the 90s, so I
no, there
guess.
weren't. There was nothing to
Yeah.
manage.
Yeah.
I wasn't even born, so I don't even know. Anyways. But yeah,
Yeah.
Mike, I saw Mike just asked a question here. Do we provide the service? Yes, we are an MSP. We are a managed compliance provider as well. We have a couple different programs here at Network Depot, and not to sell us a little bit, I want to tell you guys about what you should look for in your current MSP and not just say, hey, kick them out and bring us on. But one of the things that we do, we are a flat rate IT provider. We offer unlimited IT support for the whole nation, really internationally, on-site, off-site, remote. We're all US based, background checked citizens, which means that we can be MSP for these contracts. And we ourselves are already past level one for CMMC. We have our CMMC level two audit coming up soon. So we're on the schedule. Next month or 2 months here, we'll have that
And
official.
yeah, we're doing our mock audit in a couple weeks, and then we had the
Yeah.
full audit end of March.
Yeah.
So we know
Yeah.
your pain.
We know you're paying,
We
guys.
don't I mean, just to kind of like clarify, we don't handle KUI, right? We're an
Yeah, we don't.
MSP. We're a provider of this service. We don't handle KUI. We're not a government contractor, and therefore we do not need to be CMMC compliant, right? You would think. However, if your MSP is able to remote onto your laptop and your laptop's in scope, well, that scope just
Yeah.
it just roped them in. So the silver bullet there for MSPs and
If they're in scope, I
yeah,
guess. Let's
yeah,
talk about that in a second. Briefly, let's
yeah.
ask ourselves what should we be looking for in the right MSP? Can my current MSP get me compliant? Obviously,
Mhm.
it's going to come down to the environment and how if they are going to interact with the QE flowing back and forth between the contract org. Um, but yeah, what should they look for
Yeah.
in the MSP?
Well, I mean, I think this plays into the steps and kind of tying this back to the 5 steps. First, talk to your MSP, and then step number two is the assessment. And going into the assessment, you should have some idea of what you want your infrastructure to look like. And where I would start there, this is a piece of advice here. Where I would start with thinking through what is my infrastructure going to look like in order to pass CMMC.
Mm,
I would start with your org chart. Okay. What we have found is that's inarguably kind of like the starting point. And when you think about the org chart, think about, okay, when CUI comes in from my prime or from the government themselves, whose inbox is it hitting? And if it's hitting just a subset of your staff, say you're a 10-person org, we'll use that, and only like 2 or 3 people would ever receive that information. It's the salespeople, or maybe your design team or something like that needs to spec out stuff. Then okay, tight. Maybe an enclave is the best solution for you. An enclave meaning that only a subset of your staff would need to ever handle CUI. That's best case scenario. Okay, if you can kind of segment who has access and who touches CUI, you should know that kind of going in, and that
yeah.
should be the place that you should mentally start, thinking about if you haven't already. If unfortunately this happens, you know, relatively regularly, if unfortunately you can't really segment that off, and you're looking at your org chart and you're like, well, that person could touch it, and that person could touch it, and that person like kind of needs access to it, and that salesperson, and that, well, now we need to fulfill it. So like our our engineers need to be on, if you can't segment it and it just kind of runs rampant, well, then maybe the whole org should be moving to GCC or VDI, and you should think through that. Um, the name of this game, and you're going to hear this throughout this call and the next two calls, this whole series is limiting scope.
Yeah.
That's the game from here on out is limiting your scope. If a
That's how you save money and
C3PAO,
speed run this thing. There's the only two ways to
yeah,
do it.
a C3PAO is a certified third-party assessor organization is going to come in and they're the ones responsible for eventually giving you that rubber stamp and you are CMMC certified at that point. Okay. In order to get there, they're going to grade you on what's in scope. So let's limit that. And that's the name of the game. And you should have that mindset going into just even the assessment step two. So
Yeah. L- Let's talk about, can we break down just very, very briefly the different types of environments? We say GCC, we say Prevail, we say VDI.
mhm.
What do those mean?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and
sure.
yeah, just very briefly.
Sure. So with CMMC level one, it's going to grade your entire organization. Okay. And so there is no like enclave for CMMC level one. So I'll start there. That's your whole org. And it's 14 controls, but it's like housekeeping, like security best practices type
Mm,
stuff. And so likely you're not too far away from that right now. If like hopefully you're not too far away from that right now. And so okay, cool. You get your whole org up to there, rising tide. And then level two is it's 14 control groups or families is what they used to be called, control groups. And they're heavy policy and they are heavy technically, but the real workload is in demonstrating that you are compliant, that you are
mm,
enforcing those policies. And that's the difficult piece. And so at least we're finding that clients have they struggle the most with that part, enforcing the policies, proving they're enforcing the policies, gathering the evidence,
yeah,
gathering the artifacts, preparing themselves for this audit.
cool. Very cool. Um, do you want to dive in specific? What is GCC? What is Prevail? What is
Yeah,
VDI?
yeah.
Just very
Um,
high level.
very, 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 very briefly because we will touch on these. Prevail is, if you haven't heard of them, we're a Prevail partner. It's not really a plug for them, but it's a system built for handling CUI. And what it is it's a secure email and file repository. You don't need to switch, from Outlook or anything. Like it's a secure. You could think of it as a plugin, but it's more like a portal. And so it's a browser based. You go in there and you get your email kind of just as normal. However, it is secure. And then your file structure for CUI would live within that portal. And so it's an attractive option. And they're probably, I think they're $36 a mailbox, something like that. And then you
Yeah,
need an administrator mailbox, which I think is another 40. So cost wise, it's attractive. And then just kind of like ease of mind, it's attractive. There are certain downsides with that. But we can kind of get into that more like on a one-on-one or something like that, kind of deciding which option is the best for you. So that's Prevail. GCC, this is Microsoft's Government Community Cloud. Okay, when you hear GCC, that's what it is. It's essentially Azure. It's just
mhm,
a different cages with different levels of security. So it's going to look and feel much like the commercial Azure, except it's going to have a higher level of security, and therefore, if your stuff is hosted there, it will meet CMMC level 2. So that's what most people do. Most people go Microsoft GCC.
That's probably the most cost effective and ideal if you can get there. Probably suggest that one. For
Yeah, I
management of it, for the audit, the best one is
yeah, unfortunately, if it's GCC, your devices are still in scope. And so
yeah,
what do we say the name of the game is? Limit scope. And if you can, I would strongly suggest a VDI, which is a virtual desktop infrastructure. It's you know, either a link or an icon on your workstation, double click it, boom, you launch a secure session onto, I would host it within GCC. That's what we've done. And, you are living and operating on a virtual desktop hosted within GCC. And so that laptop then falls out of scope. You set up you can set up policies saying that, like, you can't do screen grabs from that. You can't transfer files. You're within that session, within that host. And that's the easiest one. I've been through a handful of each of these audits. That one goes really fast. So if you're looking for a silver bullet, it would be a VDI solution. There's also one called Quick Track, but a GCC VDI, that's hands down our top recommendation. It's the easiest.
Yeah, totally. Okay, awesome. Well, let's move on to step two. Okay. Last question here. Can internal IT handle uh, all of this? Like, can you do this entirely in-house?
It'd be a tough ask. You need a mix of engineers who are actually implementing the changes, and then you would need a very organized. Not saying engineers aren't organized. We're full of, organized engineers here, but it's a different skill set. Policy writing. Policy writing has to marry what you're enforcing, and you have to demonstrate that you are enforcing those policies. And so it becomes very difficult for one person to do internally. Certainly in FSO, I would strongly recommend, just picking somebody in your organization to spearhead this internally. There are decisions that you're going to have to make internally that, we have templates, we have options, but you're going to have to make this decision. So,
Yeah.
having that point person internally is I mean, it would be a necessity pretty much.
Yeah. Super important. We have a couple questions in the chat. Mike asked again, is Dropbox an option for file structure?
No, no.
Okay. Dropbox is not FedRAMP approved. So you run that risk.
Any tool sets, by the way, that interact with CUI have to be FedRAMP compliant. It's important for us to kind of maybe define that really quickly. If you go onto the FedRAMP marketplace, you'll be able to search through different software and tool sets that are FedRAMP compliant. It's a big race right now to, and I wouldn't trust a vendor that says, oh, it's on our roadmap to become FedRAMP compliant. Well, that could take a long time, and it's on
Yeah.
everyone's roadmap. So I would, just, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in. And in order to do that, that's what this is going to set us up to do. That's what this series is going to set you up to do. So,
Mhm. Another question, can Prevail be used as an enclave configuration? Yes, you can.
yeah.
What we're talking about with the VDI system, if you guys are familiar, VDI is totally separate. Your workstations are out of scope. It's the audit difficulty that we're dealing with and just the day-to-day maintenance of it. Prevail will bring in the laptops to scope most likely.
There's a toggle in Prevail that says, like, you can turn on the sync or turn off the sync. Obviously, it
Yeah.
needs to be off, right? I mean, unless you want your laptops in scope. If the sync is turned on, then your laptops are in scope. But if that's toggled off, okay, fair enough. But this is where the Prevail shortcomings are. If you have CUI that lives outside your file structure and email, potentially a line of business app, if you're a manufacturing company, maybe there's CAD files you need to interact with, blueprints you need to interact with, that we see that a lot. Okay. And so CUI leaves inboxes and file structures. Okay. It is the design, it is the files that you're interacting with and manipulating on other line of business apps. Prevail doesn't solve that problem. So that's kind of what I meant. Again, everybody's gonna have their own kind of individual, like, how they interact with it. And a one-on-one phone call is the best way to kind of deal with that. But
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, if
short
anybody
answer.
here has questions, Nate, one of our moderators here, he's going to send in the chat my account link. You can book a meeting with me. Um, Chris can join as well if he needs to, but I can help you guys define if what's going to be in scope, what's not, and probably what the best solution is going forward. And I can always bring in one of our very technical engineers I'm pretty technical, but if we need something really technical, we can
You
bring in
you
the guys
should
that,
you should have an idea of what you want your end result to look like
yeah,
very early on. And, it might change. It might change.
yeah, as
Um,
you grow.
yeah, but
Yeah,
um, but you should have an idea. So
yeah.
I would figure that
Great.
out.
Well, let's move on to if anybody has questions, again, submit them in the chat. We're going to answer things live as best as we can today. Uh, Step one, find the best MSP or manage this yourself. Step two, conduct a gap analysis. Now, this is where we're going to uncover um, a lot about your org and what the infrastructure is going to be interacting with uh, these like which enclave might be best for you guys. We're going to be able to figure that out during the gap analysis, and then also what the shortcomings are going to be. Chris, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the
Yeah,
scope first. Yeah,
I want to talk about this assessment, okay? Because this is likely where most people are. I'm guessing that this is
yeah,
likely, like
they're in the process.
pretty early on. Who do I talk to? What do I, what do I pay for this? How long should it take? Who is responsible for doing this assessment? Those sort of questions, real world, like I'm guessing that applies to the majority of the people on the call. And this is where I see the biggest deviation of of knowledge really in the industry. There are some companies out there, and I've seen them, who will quote a $75,000 assessment to, a 50-person org, something like that, and it's going to take 4 months to run this assessment, and there's a bunch of scans and stuff involved, and I wouldn't I wouldn't do that. That is a waste of your time and money, and it's coming from likely a lack of understanding on the process in general. Okay, what I would rather do is spend 30K, have a company come in for less than a week, and it's more conversational based. Um, yes, certainly they're going to be looking at your stuff, and they'll help identify CUI and how deeply it permeates throughout your organization. But it doesn't have to be longer than that. Okay. And it doesn't have to be extremely technical either. Now, it is a snooze fest when we had ours done. It was 3 days, um, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., hour for lunch, and you get there and you better be sharp. I mean, you're gonna be on your toes. I would bring in whomever is responsible for maintaining this kind of long term, your IT. I would have them on that call. So we as an MSP, we attend that with our clients. It's a necessity. They're going to be asking, "What do you currently do for this? What do you currently do for this? What do you currently do for this? What do you currently?" And you better know the answer. So if you don't know the answer, then it's good to have your MSP or um, if you have a cybersecurity company or something like that, to have them on that call. And it should really only last 3 to 4 days. And at the end of that, what you're looking for is a POAM, plan of action with milestones. That's what you're looking for. That's the deliverable from that. That's what you're paying. That's what you're paying for. And essentially, what a POAM is, you guys already know this, but a POAM is, here's where you are. Here's CMMC compliant. Here's all the stuff you got to do. That's a POAM. So that's what you're looking to get out of that assessment. That initial assessment is kind of a playbook. What do I do from here? And that's why I said you should have a good idea going into that of what you want to look like. And so it's going to be tied back to the 110 controls and 320 objectives, but it's essentially a roadmap. Um, you also get an SPRS score, um, which is important. When you submit that, that's going to be kind of the 120-day countdown timer once you submit your SPRS score, kind
Yeah.
of stating your intent to execute the POAM. And that might apply to you. Some contracts, they'll say, hey, you need to be level 2. And you're like, well, I'm not right now, but I got a POAM and I'm kind of making progress. There might be that grace period, and allow for that runway. It used to be like that. It's getting a little bit tighter, and I can imagine that it's going to continue to get tighter.
Yeah.
But if you have your stuff kind of on the way to being buttoned up and you actually have an SPRS score submitted, that I've seen some contracts that's okay
Yeah, it's sufficient.
for now.
Yeah, for now. Cool. Another question, Chris. let's talk about CMMC's relation to NIST. We've all heard of NIST, National Institute of Security and Technology. The assess against NIST SP 800-171 controls. CMMC is that. Um, let's talk about what type of technical gaps are, we'd say, most common, documentation gaps and then process gaps. Like what is going to be uncovered most likely for most orgs just getting into this?
And I don't know if this is what people want to hear, but it's like maybe I'm tainted because we are a technology firm. The technology behind enforcing these controls is not crazy complicated. Okay, you have to be familiar with it and you have to know what you're doing and you have to have the right stack and stuff like that. But it's not the most complicated technical thing to bite off. What it is more heavily kind of like burdensome is policy. And I would strongly suggest that if you don't have a GRC platform, invest in one. That's a governance and risk and compliance platform. So you've seen GRC. There's Vanta, Future Feed. There's a handful out there. There are in level one, 14 policies that you need. In level two, maybe three times that. So to keep all of that organized, keep all the evidence in there, to keep those updated, and you need to prove that you are updating them. Like if you have a access control policy and you hire somebody new and that person needs access to CUI, well, then you need to go update that policy. And you need to have screenshots that you update that policy. You need to have screenshots of the approval of like why that person needs access to it. It's very policy heavy, and that's why I mean like I don't think people want to hear that. But that's something that you know a GRC platform helps out a lot with, and your MSP will have access to that GRC platform. So they can help manage that and gather evidence, and you can assign certain tasks to them, and they can upload the evidence and the artifacts kind of ongoing. You could also have syncs. A lot of them sync with Azure, a lot of them sync with the tool sets. Vulnerability scans can be syncing in, daily or live. So,
Yeah, we use Vanta. You could say that.
mhm,
Vanta
mhm,
syncs with pretty much everything. It's very easy to manage. It's very expensive,
mhm.
extremely expensive, but it's very easy to use.
It's a huge pain point. So it's like,
Yeah,
it's kind of like,
they can sell it. Yeah,
supply demand. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Let's what does a real gap analysis include, Chris? What does this entail? How much does it cost? How long does it take?
Realistically, it should cost 30 to 40K and it should take a week
Yeah,
if the company knows what they're doing. It would be a red flag if you got any sort of quote that wasn't that.
yeah.
Yeah. Now,
More or less.
if you have a physical location that could add, 10 grand or something if they got to fly, these are administered by CCPs and CCAs, which is different roles within the CMC ecosystem are managed. They
Yeah,
used to be managed by Cyber AB, but as of April 1st, it's going to be switching over to ISACA, but they're going to be kind of certified professionals or certified assessors. Those are the people who are administering or should be administering these assessments, and then
yeah.
also the final audit.
I have another question for you, Chris. Can we self-assess uh, accurately
Can we
without outside help?
self-assess?
Yeah.
Can we do it for
Meaning we, like
ourselves?
us government contractors, not Network Depot, but like
Oh, okay. Speaking as
companies
the
in
voice of
general.
the voice of the people, Matt.
The voice, yeah, the voice of the chat here.
Yes. You can do self-attestation for level one, but for level two, you can't. So, the government's not going to respect a self-attestation. So, not for level two. So you do need to go through this process. You need to get an assessment, pay 30K. You need to pay to, basically do the POAM, like get yourself in a position to pass the audit. And that's going to be another that, needle moves wildly, but 20 to 50K, 60K, something like that, depending on how big you are. We just quoted a GCC migration for a 700-person HVAC company. It's going to be close to $250,000. So the needle moves.
Yeah.
But then finally the audit itself, I would strongly suggest a mock audit and and a full audit, and that's going to be, 50K-ish. So that's your whole journey, and you got to go through it if you want level two. And then
Yeah.
you have to do that every 3 years. The self-attestation is on your anniversary, year one, year two, and then you go back to a CDPAO on year three.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to step three, which is remediations. We've already covered the first two.
Hmm.
What are the biggest? We talked about a range just briefly. Remediation could be 30K to $250,000. What's the biggest cost driver for that difference there in the remediation
Scope,
costs?
scope. I mean, that's the name of the game, scope. So unfortunately for that client, CUI flows to everybody. There's no great controlled path of CUI. It's like this team needs to work on it, and that team is the salespeople, the engineers who are scoping it out, the design people who are building the thing, and then you have the manufacturing piece, and then you have the customer service. It's like that whole sort of arm, and that's just that maybe that for the people on this call, maybe that's you, and if it is you, you have two options. You either take your entire company to GCC or rearrange the way that that stuff flows and you carve out an enclave of individuals who, you know, can limit that scope to just those people. And then you need to pay, likely they're still doing commercial work and government work. And so you need to have a commercial uh, Microsoft environment if you likely already have that. And then you would need to have a GCC one. So you're kind of double paying for those people. So that there is a breaking point there where it's just easier to go the full bore. But
Mike just asked an awesome question. He said, "How do you control CUI to subs? It seems this is a weak point in the policy."
it is, it is. You are responsible for, well, I'll put it this way. The government is going to share, well, what industry what was your name, Mike?
Yeah, Mike, what do you guys
What
do?
industry are you in?
Say he's a Navy contractor.
Navy contractor. Okay. Well, I'll put it this way. I'll use like Andrews Air Force Base as an example. I think these things work well with an example. So that's kind of the reason I'm eliciting one. So if you are bidding on a contract to replace the heating and cooling of Hangar B at Andrews Air Force Base, okay, the government is going to be sharing information with you, specs of that hangar, power draw, blueprints potentially of the Navy base or the Air
Mm.
Force Base. Like this is sensitive information, and that would be CUI, right? That would be controlled, unclassified. It's not quite like top secret information, but it's CUI, and so they're going to be emailing that in, and they're not going to be emailing it to you. They're going to go hire Clark Construction or Whiting Turner, or if you're in the DC area, they're going to hire a government contractor, a prime, maybe Booz Allen if it's more of an IT based one. And they're going to hire that prime and they're going to share it with that prime. And that prime is then going to hire a mechanical contractor. Okay. Still not you, probably. And they are going to hire you. Okay. That whole tree needs to be CMMC compliant because CUI is flowing down. And what you're responsible for is you don't have to tag CUI. You're never going to generate CUI. Okay, so you don't have to be responsible for deciding what is CUI and what isn't as you're sharing it to your subs. But if you are sharing anything, the government's going to tag as CUI. It's going to have CUI in the subject and then purview, hopefully, if you're using email tagging and data tagging correctly, it's going to be tagging that email and that CUI all the way down wherever it goes. Okay. And so if it goes to you and then you need to send it to a sub, you're responsible
Yeah.
for
You're
that
giving them access to your,
for that tree. Yeah.
yeah.
And so yeah, it is a huge weak point is because you probably, like most other government contractors, use mom and pop subs. Call it what it is. You're using, you have a host of vendors or subs who you're like, dude, they're never gonna get this. And if that's the case, Well, that is putting that tree at risk. If they
Yeah.
get hacked and if they have
They're the most likely
that
to get
CUI,
hacked.
yeah, then that whole tree
Yeah, the
is
whole
is
tree is
compromised.
done.
So yeah, so I agree it is a weak point. But it also, you know, this is a bit I don't know, self-serving statement, but like it's good for those who can get people compliant. So,
Yeah.
that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for the people who are struggling, that hire us, get level 2 in a box, type thing. So,
So, so are there techniques to redact to transition from CUI?
or
Mike,
what?
maybe going a little bit deeper on that question. He asked, are there techniques to redact to transition from CUI? I think one more good thing to mention here, I mean, this is obvious, but subs are totally in scope um, when
Hmm.
CUI is passed down the tree.
Hmm. Yeah.
We'll wait for Mike to help us understand his question, and then I guess we'll move on to the audit itself. We can talk a little bit more
Well,
about readiness, but
the remediation of the POAM, like step 3, it that's going to be the longest runway of the process.
yeah,
Okay. You should expect step 3 to take some time. The time is going to be determined by how experienced the organization is that you've hired to set up your infrastructure, however, the end goal is. And so that's why step 1 is like make sure whoever's doing that and is going to be responsible for that, like make sure you know that early, and make sure you have that organization picked out early, because that's the biggest. I have found that CMMC doesn't matter to government contractors until they see it on a contract. Until it passes at their desk saying, hey, in order to bid on this contract or to renew this contract, you need this. And that's when it matters to a government contractor. That's when it matters to you. And so you want it done yesterday, at that point. You want it done yesterday. And so it's important because time is a variable here. And that is the biggest time suck, is getting your infrastructure where you need it to be and training your users and getting all the policies in place and getting all the evidence in place. Like that can take months. If you're not, yeah, if you need it done yesterday, and that's most people when they care about it, like, and it's pressing, and
yeah,
now they got to wait months and pay 100K, it's,
yeah, it's insane.
yeah.
It's insane. Let what could delay readiness the most? Maybe what controls or what like like screw ups could delay it.
If you've hired a company and you say, hey, build me migrate this subset of my staff over to GCC, set up a VDI, and get it all working, train my staff, get the policies together, collect all the evidence, kind of get me to a position where I can pass. Um, there's gonna be hiccups. There's gonna be hiccups unless that company's kind of done it before, um, a few times, and has the stack. So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
cool,
Or if
guys.
you wait, or if you wait. Now, I have found, like, guys, it's important to remember there are, well, let's just say 100,000 government contractors affected by this right now,
Mm,
something like
100,
that.
yeah, 120.
This is, there's a huge demand. That's a picture I'm trying to paint. There's a huge demand for this. Okay. Our phones are ringing every day
It's
for government
insane.
contractors looking to kind of start this. And
They're all
And that
coming to
that
us
means
saying,
if
"I
you
needed this
wait,
yesterday too."
yeah, that means if you wait, you're
You're risking the contract. It can,
you're getting the back of a long line. Is
yeah,
basic, and that's not just us. That's there are very few MSPs, yeah, in the nation who are capable of and experienced in doing this. And so and so, supply and demand, that there's a huge demand and not very many people who could get you there. So,
Yeah.
if you're not acting quickly, then, you're, so yeah, I say that kind of directly, but, that can be a holdup, how quickly people are acting, and prepared to move forward.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to step 4 of 5, the C3PAO audit. I want to address the wait time for the audit.
Hmm.
We have a couple partners that we use that we refer our orgs to, and then we generally say, hey, we know these guys can audit you well. They're not going to push. By the way, the audit is subjective. There's a lot to touch on with this. Let's talk about the wait first.
Yeah.
With the audit. What is that wait that we've heard of?
Yeah. I mean, like you just heard the stats, right? There's 100,000 plus government contractors looking to get this, right? Looking to book time with a C3PAO and get a rubber stamp saying that they are CMMC certified. So you would think that there would be enough C3POs to service that demand, and you would be wrong. There are fewer than 100 C3PAOs, the auditing firms, fewer than 100. And so, you know, that's a long wait. That's a long wait. Um, so we have a couple partners who we work with. The wait time is maybe like 3 months, 4 months, something like that right now. Probably getting longer. So
Yeah. Let's talk
yeah.
about what happens during an assessment. Like, what does that assessment look like? How long does it take? What happens if we fail? That's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, Matt, the audit is subjective.
Isn't that crazy?
That surprised me. Okay, I didn't expect that. I thought it would be the equivalent of like a Scantron, right? Like pass fail 110. And it's not that. It's not that. It's a human. It is a CCA, a certified assessor, and they're going to come in and they're going to spend a week with you and whomever is going to be responsible for answering these questions, and they're going to go through it. They're going to go through control by control, 3.1.1, 3.1.2, like show me this, show me that. That is what the audit is going to be. You're going to have, take a lot of energy drinks. It's going to be going through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to human being, and some C3PAOs, they are a little bit more Prevail friendly. Some are more GCC and Microsoft Shop friendly. Um, some are not friendly. Like it is a human that you're interacting with. And if you come up, like let's just say like you're going through day one and you get to 3.1.14 and you forgot to upload that evidence or something like that. Well, then you could potentially have, a follow up the next day. Oh, I found it. Here you go. So, but if
Yeah.
at the end of that, if you do not have all your, green check boxes checked at the end, you fail. I mean, that's it. So
Yeah. You
start
meets
over.
40 grand
Yeah. So I
and
would
you got to
strongly
do it
recommend a
again.
mock. I would
Yeah.
do a mock audit first.
That's what we did. We're doing a mock and
Yeah.
then we're doing the actual audit.
C3PAOs, the organizations themselves, guys, are I thought they would be like government agencies. That they're not. They're private companies. They're just private companies. And so they're in the business of making money. And so they should likely have two offerings, a mock audit and a real audit. So
Mm,
they'll likely have a mock.
yeah. Though the mock does help a lot. You don't want to,
Mm.
the mock is significantly cheaper than the actual audit and doesn't risk failing the audit itself.
It's still pretty
It's not
the one
cheap, but
the
it's,
ones that the ones I've attended are still pretty like serious, down to business. They're not
yeah.
there to waste time. They're busy. So
Yeah.
it's down to business. I will say that I forgot to say this earlier. I will say going into that audit, you have to remember this is a stranger. They don't know your business. They don't know your customers. They don't know how you currently handle CUI. They don't know your line of business CRM that like, your uncle built 15 years ago. Like they don't know anything about you. And they're going to look first at a network diagram. They need to understand what you look like, and then that's mixed in with a CUI flowchart. How does it interact with this network diagram? That one page, if you were to spend time on anything, I would spend some time there. That they're going to hover on it, they're going to refer back to it. Like that is their source of truth. They're a stranger, they don't know you, they're going to look at that and they're going to continue to look at that. Wait, are you telling me this? But then you said this workstation has access to that. So why isn't that? Like they're going to make sure it's correct. So spend some time on the network diagram.
Yeah, for sure. And then I guess the last question here is how should the company prepare for the C3PO to show up at the door? Like, what is that? What is, for us, it was like 3 days for the clients that we have that have gone through it. What does it look like when they show up?
They're down to business. I mean, you start 8 a.m., you and your team, hopefully, your MSP or whoever's kind of helped you get there, they're going to be on that call with you, and there's going to be one or two C3PAO employees, so either CCAs or CCPs, and they're going to be asking you questions immediately. I mean, you're gonna work through the control groups. Access control, that's the first that's the first control group. It's by far the heaviest. So they're likely going to start 3.1.1 and work their way down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you have a GRC platform, they will have had access to it already. You have granted them read access to it. So, leading up to the audit, so they have some level of understanding. If you
Yeah.
don't have a GRC platform, then I would suggest kind of organizing your policies and your evidence and artifacts in like a binder sort of format. Again, this is a stranger. And so when they get to 3.1.1, okay, what are you doing? Okay, see page 6, see page 4, see page, like it should tell them where to go. It
Mhm.
should be a glossary, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Cool. Well, let's say all goes well. Contractor passes the audit.
hmm
What happens then?
yeah. So you pass the audit, champagne, right? Like, let's go. This is great. And then, the work doesn't stop. So, so you still need to, you know, fulfill, what you say that you are doing. So if you have an incident response plan that says, if I get hacked, this is what I'm going to do. Well, you still need to do tabletop exercises demonstrating that you did that, right? You need to be documenting that. You still need to be running penetration tests and vulnerability scans, and there's still evidence that needs to be you need to be reviewing your policies with timestamps. There's still a lot of work, kind of day to day, that you need to continue doing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Let's talk about at least what we've seen. For us, there's a lot of controls that say like routine discussions and review of policy. What does that routine mean? How is that defined? This is kind of tying back into the audit, but how do you prove that during the audit?
hmm Yeah, I mean, it'll say that a lot. It's like ambiguous on timing. So you would think they'd be like, okay, well, biannually, you need to run a pen test. Well, they don't say that. They say regularly.
Yeah,
Like
just regularly.
yeah. So, or you need to be regularly reviewing your access control policy. It doesn't say quarterly, but you need to regularly be doing it. And so, what they mean by that is when it comes time for audit, they're not going to take you at your word. Okay. You are guilty until proven innocent. And so it's not enough for you to be like, oh, yeah, like we reviewed this policy, you know, in January. Right. Okay. Well, show me the calendar invite and who was on it. Show me the meeting notes. Show me a screenshot of the updates to the policy and what was revised. That's for like
Yeah,
reviewing a policy, dude. Like
I know it's insane.
show me, okay, you're saying that you have MFA enforced. Great. Prove it. I want to see when John tried to log in. I want to see MFA screenshot that it challenged him.
Yeah,
Okay. I want to see him type in you say if he enters the password 3 times incorrectly, it locks him out. I want to see that. So you would have to take screenshots of John incorrectly entering that password 3 times and it locking him out. You see what I mean? You are innocent or you are guilty until proven innocent. Um, so yeah, so that's what I mean of like it's not enough to say you're enforcing stuff. You need to prove that you're enforcing stuff. That's what I mean. A lot of it's screenshots.
yeah, a lot of it is. Let As a leader, I'm sure most people on this call or on this webinar watching are probably owners or part owners or executives in some level, and they're going to be monitoring this and not necessarily doing it all themselves. How should leadership monitor this maintenance of compliance, and what should they kind of look for to make sure that they're not falling out of compliance, which means potentially
Yeah.
a lost contract or um,
So this
a
is
failed recompete? Yeah.
CMMC is a business decision. Okay. You don't have to go get CMMC compliant. You could bid on contracts that don't require it. Um, and play the waiting game and hope it doesn't apply to you. So it is a business decision if you do want to pursue this, right? Because there's a return on investment that you're going to be looking for as a business owner. Okay. This is a headache and it's expensive and it takes time, focus, and energy. And it doesn't stop. Your staff is going to have to be trained on this. You might even have to switch some vendors around. This is not something. This is a business decision. It's not easy, and therefore, you have to weigh a decision. And for me, I wouldn't feel comfortable scheduling an audit unless I myself felt confident that we would pass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. This isn't like a fear tactic, but it is reality. There is such thing as the False Claims Act. I think everybody's heard of that. So if you say that you are CMMC compliant, but you come get audited and it turns out you're not, like, you pass the initial audit and then a couple
Fall out of
months later or something
compliance.
like that, you kind of like stop doing stuff. It's like, I got it tight. I don't need to worry about that anymore. If you're found, if you are audited and you're found non-compliant, but representing that you are, that's a False Claims Act. And it's the owner of the company who is signing this.
Yeah.
And there are horror stories, businesses shut down. I mean, this is like, this has happened forever, like pre-CMMC,
Yeah.
with NIST, SOC, ISO.
Mhm.
If you are claiming that you are doing something that you are not doing, that's, you know, that's a big deal. So
Yeah.
as an owner, if you want to make the decision, great. I keep talking about supply and demand chart. Well, this is a really powerful one. Here is the spend of the DOW over time. Okay. Here is the eligible recipients of that money. CMMC. So like supply and demand is in your favor. They're not stopping their spend, but they're severely limiting the number of people who are eligible to win these contracts. And
That's
therefore,
right.
if you are one of those people, you know,
There's a
you
lot of
would
money to be
benefit.
made there.
You would
Yeah.
benefit. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why our clients are getting it. I mean, they're like waving it from
Well,
their
let's
their
just looking at the
signatures.
MSP industry. We've seen very few other MSPs, mostly in the DC area, but kind of let go of their private sector side and go, okay, we're going to bid on contracts now. We're going to get CMC compliant. We're going to do this and kind of supply IT for some of these contracts that need it. There are like 20 MSPs in the country out of how many MSPs in the
50,
country?
50,000.
50,000. There's 20
Yeah.
that are CMMC compliant right now.
Yeah.
It- so
Yeah.
that's looking at our industry, but I guess we could
Yeah.
probably relate that in some way to the 120,000, 200,000, duty contractors that there are.
Yeah.
Um,
We've gotten busier as a result of this.
Insanely busy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're
So
not advertising for any of this stuff either. People are just looking and begging and finding. We have some of it written on our website. And we show up
mhm.
and they're coming to us for it and they need it now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
especially a lot of the bigger orgs that are primes and looking to sub the stuff out, you're going to lose your recompete if you don't have this. And someone else that does have it is going to steal that contract from you.
Yeah.
Just the way it is.
Yeah.
So, okay. Um, let's talk very briefly about the cost of maintaining certification. And let's just open up the floodgates to questions. So, guys, if you have any questions throughout, start typing them in the chat. Chris is going to answer this last question for me, and then we're going to talk briefly. We're going to answer your guys' questions, and then if you guys have really specific questions, or you want me to get on a call with you guys and go through your entire org chart and look and see what you guys might need in order to start going about this whole CMMC thing, I'd love to do that. I'll send my calendar link to all you guys after this to your emails. So, Chris, what is the cost of maintaining this CMMC compliance?
You need a point person internally. So whoever that is, if that's not their full-time job, then a wedge of that salary or payroll expense should, you should maybe factor that in a little bit as far as cost goes. But then you need, I mean, like I don't want to be say like you need a company like us who is managing this effort for you, and your MSP, like you have to remember, Matt, and an MSP who has commercial clients doesn't look the same as an MSP who has government
Yeah,
contractor CMMC
they're totally
clients.
different.
They don't look the same. Okay. Their functions are similar. There's a help desk, they have their tool sets, they have their consultation. Those things are similar. However, there's just a higher caliber of individual at the MSP who's responsible for government contractors. Though your employees need to know about CMMC, they need to know the frameworks, like even a password reset, dude. Like if one of your users calls in right now for a password reset, there has to be a policy in place saying like, okay, well, I can't reset your password. I don't know who you are. I have to verify who you are. And then I have to ask your POC if you should have access to that thing. And I need to document it. And if they're asking for access to a SharePoint folder that they shouldn't have access to, well, then that help desk person has to know, right? And so there's just a different level of MSP who's capable of doing this. All their tools have to be FedRAMP compliant, which most MSPs are not. All the account management and project team, like there's a lot more touch points throughout the year that they're going to have to be communicating with you. So that's just a higher level of MSP, and so the cost of engagement there is a little bit higher. So instead of a normal MSP $200 a user per month, it would be a more expensive. A little bit more expensive cost of engagement there.
Yeah, it's a lot more payroll on our side going towards maintaining this thing.
Hmm.
You got to pay for it. Okay. Well, that's pretty much it. Does anybody have any questions you want to throw in the chat? If not, we're going to close this thing up and then would love to talk to you guys again at another point. Like I said, we're going to send out my Calendly link. You can talk to me. We can bring Chris on. We can bring one of our technicians on and really dive into your org and see, first of all, do you need this? Second of all, when do you need it? And then what is it going to cost for you to get there? And we'll just lay this all out to you guys for free. We're doing free consultations for the entire NAGC. Also for NAGC members, we do a 10% discount if you are an active member or were an active member, get reinstated. But if you are an active member, we would love to present our pricing and then provide you guys that discount. And the discount also applies to the maintenance term of the CMMC completion as well. So, yeah,
And just to kind of like set the stage, this is a three-part series. So this is this is the first one, kind of organizing what the process looks like to becoming compliant and staying compliant. The next one's gonna be focused a little bit more on pricing, like individual pricing. How much does GCC cost, Chris?
yeah,
How much does the VDI cost? Right? What, do I need higher level laptops? What do I need? Like that sort of stuff, like more in depth, kind of as we go through this series. So.
yeah. 2 weeks from today, same time, we're going to be talking about that. And then the third of the three-part series is going to be maintaining CMC compliance, long-term strategy. How are things going to look 5 years from now? That sort of thing. Philip just asked, is there any documentation regarding this presentation segment that I'm not aware of that can be sent out to us? Uh, yes. I'm assuming you're asking about like materials for like what the stuff looks like. We
We're
can
gonna
actually,
record. We've been recording this session,
yeah,
and
that'll be
and
posted on our YouTube and
and we ha
LinkedIn.
we have like the 5 steps of CMMC. Matt and I have done podcasts on this before, so we have a lot of collateral on that. And Nate's gonna be following up with like kind of e-pamphlets and stuff like that with all the history of CMMC, kind of all that stuff, commonly asked questions or frequently asked questions. Um, But yeah, yeah.
Yeah, guys, we're doing this on behalf of the NAGC. They asked us to come on here. They asked us to present for you guys. We love them as a partner. We'd love to meet each one of you guys individually. I'm happy to dedicate up to an hour of my time for each one of your orgs to see, what it's going to take to get you guys supporting our country. That's what we're here for. So, yeah, nice seeing everybody.
Legit, this is like a legit good thing. Like I
It's
know it's
so awesome.
annoying, but tying it back to real world, like this is a legit good thing that honestly, it's like almost like
It's a shame it took this
embarrassingly
long to get
late
here.
for,
Yeah.
yeah. CMMC, we were an RP, RPO, registered practitioner organization, accredited by the CMM by Cyber AB, which was the accreditation body back then. In 2020, like that's how long this thing is like kind of taken to, you know, actually have some teeth behind it. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's a good thing that that's finally kind of coming around.
We'll leave it open for another minute. If we don't get any questions, it was nice seeing everybody. We really appreciate everyone's time. Like Chris said, this is going to be posted, the whole thing on our YouTube. We're going to chop up some segments, post on our LinkedIn's. And yeah, hope to see you guys soon. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for your questions today.
All right, thanks, guys.
Okay. See you, everybody.